who knew him better than anyone, sensed that he was carrying a truth that had grown too heavy to hide, a truth shaped by years of routine, responsibility, and unspoken longing. David had always been a steady man, the kind who built a life carefully, who loved with actions more than words, and for 10 years their marriage had been built on trust, shared dreams, and quiet nights like this one. Yet lately his smile felt delayed, his laughter thinner, and his thoughts far away, as if part of him was searching for something he could not name. And Emily noticed how quickly time moved that evening, how the food cooled untouched, how the silence pressed forward until David finally spoke with a calm voice that barely hid the weight behind it, saying he had a wish he didn't know how to explain, not a demand, not an accusation, but a feeling that had grown quietly inside him, a need to feel alive again, seen again, wanted in a way that felt lost somewhere between schedules, responsibilities, and familiar affection. Emily listened closely, her heart beating fast but her face steady, because she understood this kind of honesty was rare and dangerous at the same time. And David continued, explaining that his love for her had not faded, that he was not planning to leave, but that something inside him felt unfinished, restless, like a door he had never opened, and he admitted he was afraid of becoming a man who lived only in memories of who he once was. The words landed hard, but they were not cruel, and Emily felt both pain and compassion rise together, because she too had felt invisible at times, had wondered when comfort slowly replaced passion, and in that moment she realized David was not asking for freedom, he was asking to be understood. And before fear could stop her, she answered with honesty of her own, telling him she did not want to be the reason he felt trapped, that she believed love should not be a cage. And when she said she would not stand in his way, the room fell quiet again, but this silence was different, heavy with consequence. David looked at her with surprise and gratitude, mixed with guilt, while Emily felt the weight of her words settle deep inside her chest, because she knew that saying yes had changed something forever, even if neither of them fully understood how. And as the evening moved forward, their conversation ended without a clear solution, only an agreement to move carefully, to stay honest, and to protect what still mattered. Yet as Emily later lay awake in their bed, listening to the steady rhythm of David's breathing, she realized that love could be strong and fragile at the same time, that trust could open doors it might not survive, and that sometimes the bravest choices are the ones that quietly rewrite the future. Because in saying yes to his wish, she had stepped onto a path with no clear ending, unsure whether she had protected their marriage or placed it in danger, knowing only that the truth, once spoken, could not be taken back, and that this night, simple and calm on the surface, was the beginning of a story neither of them had planned, but both would have to face. After that night, life shifted in ways Emily didn't expect, subtle yet undeniable, as David seemed lighter, more present, yet still distant in ways she couldn't name, and she found herself observing him closely, noticing the small smiles he gave when he thought she wasn't looking, the way he held himself differently, as if a weight she could not see had lifted. And Emily tried to stay strong, keeping herself busy with work, errands, and quiet walks along the rainy Seattle streets, telling herself that this was what love sometimes demanded: patience, understanding, and the courage to let someone face their own restlessness. And yet she could not ignore the emptiness she felt in quiet moments, when the apartment was too still and the city lights outside reminded her of life moving forward without her permission. Because even though David was there, emotionally he seemed elsewhere, his thoughts floating just out of reach. And it was in that space, fragile and uncertain, that Emily met Mark, a colleague she ran into during a business trip to Vancouver, someone easy to talk to, with a calm voice that made her feel noticed and understood, not in a romantic way at first, but in a way that awakened a part of her she had forgotten existed, a part that longed for connection, for laughter, for conversation that lingered like sunlight through clouds. And although nothing happened between them beyond friendship, Emily felt her heart beat faster when she saw his messages, when she recalled their shared jokes, the way he listened without judgment or expectation. And returning home to David after each encounter with Mark, Emily was confronted with a quiet truth she could not ignore: love is not static, it shifts and changes, it asks for space, it demands honesty, and it challenges comfort. And as she lay beside David at night, feeling the warmth of his presence but sensing the distance in his mind, she realized that desire and affection could coexist with longing and curiosity, that caring deeply for someone does not erase the need to feel alive in unexpected ways. and she began to understand that her life was moving in multiple directions at once, that her heart was learning new rhythms, that love was teaching her patience not through absence but through awareness, and though she felt guilty for noticing Mark's effect on her, she also recognized it as a mirror reflecting what she and David had quietly lost in routine, what they could reclaim only by seeing and acknowledging it, and each day became a careful balancing act, a dance between devotion and discovery, between holding on and allowing growth, between the love she had always known and the emotions she was beginning to understand anew, and in these quiet moments, Emily realized that marriage was not just about presence but about attentiveness, not just about history but about being awake to the present, and that sometimes the bravest act in love is to allow yourself to feel fully, even when it means confronting longing, fear, and uncertainty. Because it is in those spaces that relationships either deepen or reveal the truths that have been hidden, and Emily knew that the weeks ahead would test them both, that her feelings and David's wishes were entwined in ways that could either bring them closer or create distance, that love required courage, reflection, and honesty, and that she had to navigate her own heart carefully while remaining compassionate toward David, all while understanding that the quiet presence of someone new could illuminate the cracks in their life, that these small awakenings could teach her more about herself than she had expected, and that the journey they were on was no longer simple, no longer predictable, but charged with possibility, emotional depth, and the tender ache of change, and as Emily closed her eyes each night, she carried the weight of awareness, the pulse of attraction, and the understanding that love was alive, moving, evolving, and that in letting it breathe she might find a path forward that honored both her heart and David's, that acknowledged the truth of human desire, the beauty of connection, and the fragile, precious complexity of life shared with someone you care for deeply, knowing that this chapter, fast-moving and full of tension, would define not only their marriage but her own understanding of who she was and what it meant to love fully, bravely, and without pretense. David noticed the change in Emily long before she spoke, small shifts that spoke louder than words, the way her eyes lingered on her phone, the subtle smiles that came when he wasn't looking, the quiet energy in her movements that seemed lighter, yet distant, and he felt a knot in his chest because he knew that love, even strong love, could bend and strain in ways that were invisible until it was undeniable. One evening, unable to contain his concern, he asked gently if she was okay, and Emily took a deep breath, realizing that hiding the truth any longer would only build walls between them, so she spoke carefully, honestly, telling him about Mark, not as a confession of wrongdoing but as a reflection of what she had felt, an awakening of connection and understanding that she hadn't realized was missing, the story flowing quickly from her lips, raw but measured, because she knew that truth carried its own power, that acknowledging it could hurt but could also free them from illusions, and as she spoke, David listened intently, absorbing every word, the pain and the pride in her honesty weaving together, and for the first time, they sat facing each other without pretense, hands resting lightly on the table, realizing that love was more complicated than they had admitted, more fragile yet stronger for being tested, because it required vulnerability, openness, and the courage to face emotions they could neither fully control nor predict, and as Emily described the way Mark had made her feel seen and understood, David felt a mix of jealousy, sadness, and gratitude, knowing that her feelings did not diminish his love but revealed the depth of her humanity, the need for connection that he had glimpsed in himself and could not fully satisfy alone, and when she finished, there was silence, but it was not uncomfortable, it was a quiet acknowledgement that their relationship was evolving, that honesty had opened a door that could not be closed, and they both realized that from this moment, nothing would be quite the same, that the way they had loved before would have to expand to accommodate new truths, and as they sat together, hands nearly touching, hearts beating fast, they understood that infidelity was not necessarily about betrayal but about unmet needs, and that sharing these truths could either break them or strengthen them, and in the stillness of that evening, they felt the weight of their choices, the responsibility of love, and the fragile beauty of a marriage that had survived comfort but now faced reality, because David could no longer pretend he didn't notice, Emily could no longer pretend she was unaffected, and both understood that the path forward required patience, empathy, and a willingness to confront feelings they had long ignored, and as night fell, they sat side by side, silent yet connected, each aware that the quiet line between them had shifted, that love demanded honesty even when it hurt, and that their bond could either fracture under the pressure of unspoken longing or emerge stronger through understanding, teaching them that marriage is not just a promise of presence but a living, breathing commitment to see, hear, and honor each other, even when hearts wander, emotions swell, and life's unexpected awakenings arrive, leaving them both on the edge of something uncertain yet deeply human, something that demanded courage, reflection, and the willingness to face the truth without fear, because it was only in this space, raw and fast-moving, that they could hope to grow together, redefine love, and navigate the delicate, thrilling tension between desire, loyalty, and emotional honesty that now filled their home. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and profoundly changed, as Emily and David learned to navigate the delicate balance between love, honesty, and the truths they had discovered, their marriage no longer defined by routine alone but by the quiet understanding that feelings could shift, that longing could exist alongside devotion, and that the heart often demanded courage rather than comfort. And in this new rhythm, they found themselves more present with each other, speaking openly about emotions that had once been buried, sharing thoughts that were once too vulnerable to voice. And even though the shadow of Mark lingered in Emily's memory, it was no longer a threat but a reminder of how human connection could awaken parts of them they had overlooked, teaching them to appreciate moments of attention, affection, and laughter more deeply. And David, for his part, had learned that his wish, once spoken, had ripple effects he could not control, that acknowledging desire did not weaken love but required him to embrace honesty, empathy, and patience, and together, they began rebuilding their relationship on new foundations, noticing the little things, the way Emily's eyes lit up at morning sunlight, the warmth of David's hand on hers, the shared jokes that had resurfaced after months of careful communication, and in these small yet meaningful ways, they discovered that love could mature, evolve, and deepen even after it had been challenged, teaching them that trust and respect were not static but living, requiring constant care, attention, and courage. And as they navigated life, they encountered moments of reflection and doubt, times when old fears resurfaced, or memories of longing made them question their choices, yet each challenge was met with dialogue, honesty, and a willingness to see each other fully, flaws and all, and slowly, the tension that had once threatened to pull them apart transformed into a quiet strength, a mutual understanding that love is not possession but partnership, not control but acceptance. And through it all, Emily realized that saying yes to David's wish had not destroyed their marriage but had forced them to confront what truly mattered, to face their vulnerabilities, and to embrace change as a part of life rather than a threat. And standing together one soft morning, watching sunlight spill through the windows of their home, hands intertwined, hearts calm yet aware of the journey they had traveled, they understood that what remained after the wish was not the same as what they had before but something richer, something more honest, something that required them to breathe, to trust, and to love not perfectly but fully. And in that moment, Emily saw the quiet truth of their life, that love survives not because it is easy, not because it is simple, but because it is brave enough to face desire, uncertainty, and the unexpected, to honor both heart and truth, to bend without breaking, to let go without abandoning, and to cherish what grows when honesty and courage are allowed to shape the bond between two people. And as they shared a soft smile, aware of the past, the challenges, and the lessons learned, they knew that this chapter was theirs, unique and unrepeatable, a testament to the strength of commitment, the power of empathy, and the beauty of a love that could survive change, awaken longing, and ultimately, flourish in ways neither of them could have predicted, proving that life and marriage, though messy and unpredictable, can emerge stronger, gentler, and more alive when hearts are open and brave enough to say yes, even when the answer carries uncertainty.